Hi, I'm Lee Maxey, CEO of MindMax, and I'm very happy to be here with Annette Roberts Webb. She and I have known each other a long time and at a couple different institutions, and I'm really excited. You have your own deanship now of
Yeah.
a new unit at a new institution, and I find UC Merced a fascinating example of something that's kind of unusual in higher ed, a new school.
Yeah.
Not a new unit, but a new school in a new community.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts about your mission, your charter as a new extension, now professional and continuing education unit at Merced.
Yeah. UC Merced is a really interesting campus because it was built in a part of the state that had been underserved for a long time, just really overlooked, not even underserved, just completely overlooked. The community is one of high agricultural economy, and because of the disinvestment in that area, we have a lot of folks who with low educational attainment and high poverty rates. And so establishing a research institution in the middle of that creates a sense of hope for the future of that region, and brings really incredible resources in the form of ag tech and medical education to a region that is quite really directly affected by the lack of having those resources for so long. So for me to make the move from my former institution that I was at for 24 years to a new role as a dean of the Division of Professional and Continuing Ed was really motivated by being able to serve this community that was such high need and that didn't have a division like this, providing certificates and credentials to working professionals and unemployed or underemployed folks who really need that to improve their social mobility.
When we first started talking, when we were in the congratulatory phase, as I heard more and more about the demographics, and I'll just say the opportunities,
Yeah.
but challenges. Very multilingual,
Yep.
very low attainment of education, very
Yeah.
low discretionary income for
Yep.
education, not a lot of industry
No.
to be able to fund. And so, can you talk through some of your thinking as you were getting started about, hey, these are the things I need to do first, and these are the things I need to get under me,
Yeah.
because you've been quite the pioneer settler, and I think you're like past settler stage now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, we had an amazing first year. So uh, brought together the team with your team to do an impact workshop on strategic growth, and that really helped us to set our priorities and to all be on the same page towards the outcomes that we wanted for our community. So we defined our operating principles, and those really anchor our work. So as a team, when we're looking at communities within the larger community that we serve, we're asking ourselves, how are we making access to a research university available to this group of people? That's one of the things that I faced early on, was that people knew about the university. It is established kind of on the outskirts of town, and they didn't see themselves as belonging to the university because they weren't an undergraduate student. They weren't that age range. They weren't thinking about matriculating into a graduate program because maybe they don't have a bachelor's degree. So that was one of the very early things for us to figure out, was how do we engage this population in alternative micro-credential, digital badges, corporate education, all of the things that we can provide through the division that isn't provided by the campus, but still makes that community feel connected to a research university. So we started with talking about, we bring the university to you. And one way that we did that is we literally established a building in downtown on Main Street where we're hosting community seminars on a variety of topics that connect community folks, nonprofit organizations, and public, teach public education, all kinds of people into hearing about topics that our research faculty are working on. So, we've defined ourselves as being this bridge between the community and the campus research, so we can help bring research to practice.
Yeah, I think uh, you leaving campus and joining the community is such a powerful physical statement.
Yeah.
But more than that, I really do think that's what professional and continuing education units do functionally for a university anyway.
Yeah.
They sit in that fringe, in that liminal space,
Yeah.
where when they discover something that's meaningful, they bring it back to the institution. And I think this Merced, specifically UC Merced, is a build it and build it ahead of time,
Yeah.
and it will lead. And I think even the short amount of time I've been reading your news and stuff, and it sounds like things are really happening. I think people are thinking differently about why UC Merced is there now.
Yeah.
So
the university itself is amazing. It's very innovative. Because it's only 20 years old, it doesn't function like a legacy institution where, even though we're part of a very strong legacy system, the people that work there are builders, and so I felt right at home. Like, I'm a builder. Continuing ed units, professional ed units, we are builders. We're always pivoting. We're always looking for innovation and the next thing. And I feel like the campus has that ethos about it as well.
Yeah.
So it's a really I feel really supported by our campus leadership also in the efforts that we're doing. And I think another key piece of our strategy was to be connected to our community through joining different regional collaboratives and being at the table to hear challenges that our community is facing. And so, again, we didn't expect them to come knock on our door and say, can you talk to me about this thing? We're showing up in their spaces and saying, tell me more about what you're going through, and is there a way that we can help you, with a solution towards that. So an early win that I was not expecting was in custom education. And so we've had some really strong partners, and we've talked at this conference about anchor partnerships and anchor stakeholders and working with them to help them solve their big sticky issues, And so that was one of the areas we had some early wins, was being able to do some custom education and leadership and team building and organizational culture, which is really cool.
Another early foundational thing that you did that really impressed me was the work you did with the handbook for the faculty senate. And I think this is, it was one very thoughtful about, getting, I'll call it ducks in a row, so that when things changed, that you had these pathways, these mechanisms for being able to do the things you needed to do to serve who you're trying to serve. So can you talk through your thinking behind that and how successful that was? Because I think it was very successful.
Sure. Yeah, we created an academic senate handbook on university extension at that time, so PACE. And this was really to socialize the mission and the processes and the academic quality control pieces of what we do with our campus stakeholders. So mostly with faculty and leadership on campus, because this division didn't exist before in the way that it exists now. And so they didn't really know quite what to do with us and how academic senate regulations drove our work. And so when I was able to show them through this handbook, we're very connected to the UC academic quality and rigor standards. And this is how, through writing this handbook up, that really resonated a lot. It also helped us to socialize our purpose and to be able to talk to different stakeholder groups in the campus about the work we do.
So our country's in I'll call it an interesting time, with trying to deal with a lot of different populations. You have a microcosm of a lot of different populations. What are some of the principles and ideas that you're using to be able to be successful with a very diverse population? of
Yeah.
people that you serve?
Yeah. So, I often get asked how we decide to work on projects, or to how we decide whether a program is a yes or a no to go forward with. And the first thing that we look at is this mission aligned? If it's not, then maybe we'll direct them to a different partner. If it is, then we go into the process for developing new projects. And so we form advisory boards of key practitioners who are in our community and who are representative of who our future learners will be. And I would tell anyone who works in this business, if you don't start with an advisory board for developing new programs, then you should rethink your model and think about how to involve community practitioners' voices in your curriculum. Because if they have a voice in it, then they're going to share it with their circles, and then those circles then share it beyond that, right? So you get broader reach, but your content is also much more relevant. We can build something and it will land flat if that voice isn't involved. So I would say that's probably the number one piece of advice I would give people in this work. But it is a very strategic piece of how we build and how we respond to our community needs, because we're doing environmental scanning all the time, right? So today it's one edict that comes, tomorrow it'll be something different. You have to be scanning to be able to pivot and adapt. And our staff have to be agile also. Just because we do it this way today doesn't mean we're going to do it that way in 6 months if our environment has changed.
And you also built off of your core success area with education. So can you talk about how you leveraged or started with that, and then?
Sure. Yeah, so we run a multiple and single subject teacher credential program for K-12 educators. And we've been able to work with our school district partners in, like I said, custom education. That was something we weren't doing before. So we've convened school district administrators to come in and think about what their leadership teams, how they operate from an organizational culture standpoint, doing some leadership development, so that one thing that we've learned in working with our partners in the community is that the career trajectory wasn't always clear. So had a lot of folks coming into entry-level jobs, but they didn't see that next step into management or supervision, and then into kind of the executive level leadership. And so we've started building some pathways intentionally so that we can increase folks' social mobility within the current careers that they've started. So that's been good in the education space, but it's also carried over into some other spaces like public health and behavioral health. So we've been able to take some of those early wins that we had with education, and now we're adding different portfolio offerings to them too. So
We talked initially about you wanting some assistance to get some guidance, develop strategy, and so forth. We were able to do an impact workshop together. Can you talk through your thinking behind doing that, how it went, what was the experience, and so on?
Yeah, I had a new team with a lot of ideas, no cohesion, no roadmap, and
not a lot of money.
Not a lot of money, and not a lot of programs that were generating money either, right? So really starting from scratch. And the impact workshop helped us all get on the same page. It helped everyone have shared accountability. We established our operating principles so that we have those as an anchor to be able to look back on when sometimes we're feeling, a little, either we're in a dip of, challenges. Then we can look at those operating principles and see, okay, this is why we do this, and this is how we're going to do this. And it really helped us to set priorities so that we didn't feel like we had to do everything all at once, because we had some big priorities. We needed to build infrastructure. We needed to build partnerships. We needed to build programs. We needed to consider our multilingual learners in building those programs. So all of those things are big rocks. They're not the small things.
Right.
So having that impact workshop help us organize how we would do that. And I'm really happy because we have accomplished a lot of things because we were intentional about that roadmap from the beginning.
Yeah, it was really impressive. I've said it many times that a lot of times people do a consultation and then nothing happens after. And so you guys have taken things and knocked them off a list.
Yeah.
One of the things I took away that I was glad that you identified in that workshop was serving multilingual populations, designing your programs from the beginning to be in multiple languages. And I know from my background in instructional design, you're more likely to have a better program rather than repurposing a program or translating it or localizing it. So that was one of the takeaways that I had. That I thought, I'm glad they identified that in program development, to design it on purpose to be in multiple languages. So it's it's been great working with you. What are some thoughts you have about PACE or about continuing ed, professional education in the near term, longer term? You have a population that isn't technologically savvy. So you're kind of, old in time in terms of who you serve. But what are you seeing as the future?
We're working on building our portfolio so we can continue to reach more learners or more prospective learners in our community. But I think the future for professional and continuing and online educators is really to connect to industry. And, there are a lot of ways to do that. And I think we have to be careful about knocking on industry's doors without listening to what they need first and building relationships with them first. So, the universities, and I would say this is, most universities go knocking on industry's doors because we need their input so that we can refine our research. And we don't always stop and listen to what they need from us. I mean, they need our students as employees in the future, right? So that's sort of the reciprocal loop. But for their incumbent workers, that's where PCOs can come in and really help them to upskill or reskill, or when technology shifts, to really step in and be their partner in just-in-time learning. And that's not something our traditional academic departments can do, right? They can't be that just-in-time partner. But we can if we build the relationship with them. But we also can't just go knock on their door with our sales pitch and be like, hey, we have a certificate for you. Your people need it. Come take it. Sign them up. Here's the cost. It can't be transactional. It needs to be long-term, sustainable partnership. And so I think building those, being intentional about industry outreach and industry involvement and curriculum design is really where the future of our work should be.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Great working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.